a call to go to Scotland. And this guy, he wrote to me, he said, listen, he said, I've got 12 people in my church. He said, there's no offerings for you, but if you come, you can preach, we'll hire a hall. And he said, we live in one of the worst slums in Glasgow. It's a dangerous area, but if you ever turn up here, you can preach. Anyway, I told my son, we're going. And so we flew over to England, and we got a bus up to Edinburgh. And I arrived in Edinburgh, and typical John Mellor fashion, said, hey, I'm here. He said, who are you? He said, this is John Mellor. You told me if I ever turned up, you'd have a meeting. He said, what? Anyway, so I found out later, this guy was so depressed, he was about to leave the ministry. He was in severe depression. Because he used to have about 150, 200 people, and it went down to about a dozen people. Anyway, so he picked me up, and at last minute he hired this hall. He's depressed, and by the way, I found out he lied. He didn't have 12 people, he had 11. And that included himself, his wife, his teenage daughter. That included a brand new born baby and a toddler. And that included a man who came to church once a month because he hated the pastor. And that was the church. He hired a hall. But that weekend, miracles broke in.
Wow. So good.
You know, within 2 months, we had the press. We had the news of the world. God bless Rupert Murdoch. he actually sent his reporters to report on the miracles. And they did a series, the news of the world. The infamous paper did a series on the miracles. And people came from all over. We had a revival on our hands. In News of the World, they had estimated 15 million readership. It's the biggest red newspaper in Europe. And they began to report on the miracles. And people flew in from everywhere. And I was having meetings till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I was having 8 or 9 hour meetings every second and third night. And it was just insanity. And God began to do all these amazing miracles.
Good.
It's amazing. And so I've got a book I wrote about it. And so in a short space of time, I went from sitting in a broken down caravan and the devil telling me you're finished, to all of a sudden, you know, being the biggest newspapers in Britain and Scotland,
awesome.
the front headlines, you know, we have the Denmark, front headlines in Denmark, front page of the biggest paper in Denmark. God did major miracles over there. And there's stories of blind people, crippled people. One lady was in a wheelchair for 9 years, smashed spine, had walked for 9 years, and she came the first meeting from Ireland. I prayed for her, nothing happened. And what I teach is that, you know, not every miracle is instant. Sometimes miracles can be gradual. She came to 3 different meetings. I prayed for her. She wasn't healed. I kept telling her, you come. I'll keep praying for you. Believe for a miracle. She came to the 4th meeting, and she was totally healed. She came next week, and she was dancing in church. A lady who the doctor said would never walk again, was smashed by spine, was severely crippled. And that made the newspapers. And I tell you what, when they report things like that, people turn up. And so that was the early days. And then Chas Gulo here heard about the miracles over what's happening in Europe, and he invited me here. And it's actually happened 11 years ago that I had meetings here, and a lady who was crippled with MS, and she had paralysis and pain. She was in a terrible state, and she got totally healed. And Mark Furler, who's now the editor of the Sunshine Coast Daily, he came down and he came down to inspect what was going on. And he saw the miracle. People in wheelchairs, cripples walk. And Mark Furler did a front page story, and he put, I saw a miracle. There's a crippled lady who walked. Anyway, tonight, got a hold of me. They did stories, current affair eventually. And so it all began in the outback of Catherine, and then God began to do stuff over in Europe. And now I've been travelling the world, and I'm based in Australia, based out of this church because Fraser Chase is a friend of mine. And that's a very fast track of how I ended up sitting here tonight. And so it's been an amazing journey. This morning we had a meeting here for the men's morning breakfast meeting. A guy came on crutches, had a damaged leg. They cut out a cancerous growth from his leg, a lot of pain to walk. And I just laid my hands on his leg, and God healed him. He walked up and down with his crutches, struggling monkey. The other guy had damaged shoulders, couldn't lift up his shoulders, terrible pain, was healed. And God began to heal people. This is about 7 o'clock this morning, about 5, 6, 7. God was healing people, set people free. And my heart is to encourage and inspire you that Jesus can use you. Jesus uses believers. You know, there's a beautiful scripture that says, many are called, but few are chosen. And one thing I've learned is right between the calling and the choosing, right in the smack in the middle, is the proving. Is the proving. Is the proving. You know, back in the old days, you see Clark Taylor used to have his ministry schools. Have you ever heard of Clark Taylor?
Yeah.
He had ministry schools. And I went to Clark Taylor Ministry School in 1991. And back in those days, you had a sum total of 3 or 4 weeks training, and then they sent you out to start a church. Is that crazy?
Yep.
That were the wild days. So I actually had 3 weeks at Clark Taylor, and we had about 157 students who went through to start churches. About 5 years ago, I actually ran into somebody, and he said, John, we actually did a survey on a year. We found out that at 157, there's about 12 people left who's still in ministry and serving God out of 157. In fact, there's many of those who don't even go to church anymore, and some even walk away from God. And so, you got to realise, you know, serving God is a choice. And it's not, you don't try it, this is for life. If you're here studying the Bible, you're here because you want to serve God, and it's not a transient thing, it's for the rest of your life. See, calling is an individual thing, and there can be testings in your life. But you know what, I found one thing, I can look back and say, you know, God is so faithful.
Yeah, He's good. That's right.
So if I could, I'm trying to cram a lot of stuff here, but you know, I used to suffer from very severe depression. I was tormented. I was in a very precarious sort of state for many, many years, panic attacks, severe depression. For most of my adult life, I wouldn't go in an aeroplane. I was scared of cars, scared of buses. I had really major mental problems. My mum had been in a mental hospital. My grandmother, alcoholism, mental illness goes right through the family, right back to the early that second fleet they first came out and traced it right back. But you know, Jesus breaks curses.
Yeah, it's good.
And it's a beautiful thing to be so free. And part of the reason why you serve God is because He sets you free.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know what it's like to be in darkness, but know what it's like to be totally, utterly free and excited and on fire for God. And it's just so awesome. And that's part of my passion. It's not just to see people healed, but to see people made whole.
Yeah, it's good.
And come to know Jesus. And it's all about bringing people to Jesus.
Yeah.
And but you know, the true ministry starts right where you are. It doesn't start here at the Bible college. It starts right where you are. I talked to my wife tonight about it. You know, we talk about some things I don't normally talk about. And my ministry first began. People ask me, John, how long have you been in ministry? And I tell them, the first day I got saved. The first day I got saved, I began to talk about Jesus. And in my early Christian days, in my car, if I had spare seats, I'd go and find people, or pick them up, bring them to church. Even when I had family, young kids, I remember we used to cram. One time we had about 14 people in our car, we had a station wagon. We crammed babies, we crammed them in the boot, we crammed people. So I was saying we get them to church. Because I had the attitude, if there's a spare seat, you can fit one person in there who can come here about Jesus. And then one day I got this crazy idea, I had visions of an evangelist. I said, well, I want to go out there and preach the gospel. And so I began to just go door knocking on doors, and I began to go out the streets. I remember the early days I got to the valley in Brisbane, and that Fortitude Valley, and I thought, there's always people getting on and off trains. I can stand on the seat and preach them while they're waiting for the train to come. And I stand at bus stops and preach them. It might sound radical. And then I thought, you know what? There was people out late night shopping. One place I was at, I was spending one whole year on a Thursday night and a Saturday morning just talking about Jesus, going to pubs. And so this whole ministry began a long time before I began to preach on stages and churches, and it began a long time. So your ministry really, it begins right where you are. It's not about, I'll go to Dream Centre, I'll learn about how to minister, and then maybe someone can get me a job or get a job in a church somewhere. No, your ministry, seriously, it begins today. It begins right where you are. Yeah. And there's no more wonderful calling than serving Jesus.
Yeah, it's good. That's right.
To see broken bodies healed, see miracles happen, it's wonderful. And just the last month, miracles we've seen. One guy came from South Australia, came in a wheelchair, had a broken neck, and after the power of God touched him, and you probably saw in that little clip, I made up because I just grabbed some last few things that had happened just last month. I feel on there, and he began to get full movement back in his fingers, and began to get all the feelings come back to my fingers. First time in 8 years, and all the feelings come back to my feet, and he begins to move his hands, and then he begins to move his neck that was seized and broken for 8 years, and he got up on his feet. He can take his first steps, and I'll tell you what, it's exciting. We see the power of God flow through people and begin to set them free. Just amazing. Just sitting in this auditorium here, I remember 5 years ago, one guy came, he's blind and paralysed. And in that meeting, God opened, were you there at that meeting? God opened his blind eyes, and he was paralysis, and he was in a wheelchair for 9 years. And we just seen so many outstanding miracles, you know. I could just go on and on and on. And I spoke to Peter before. I said, Peter, I'll share some background, a little bit of background. And then maybe Peter can have some questions for me, because there's a lot I can talk about. But my heart is to inspire you that God looks at people's hearts. Yes. And I'll tell you one thing right now. God often uses the most unlikely people on this planet. He really does. The most unlikely people. If you feel maybe you feel a bit out sometime, of a misfit, maybe you don't fit in, or maybe you just feel that the brightest or the smartest, I want to tell you what, the Holy Spirit can make up in every area of your life. That's right. And He looks at the heart of man and woman. He sees your heart. And what I love about God, He can overcome, He can even use your weaknesses for your own good. Yeah. He can even use your problems. He can turn them around to make something great out of your life. You know what? The reason why I believe God can use me is that I've been so broken and busted and such a bad state that for so many years I just hung on to Him, and in hanging on to Him I learned His faithfulness. But I found He is so wonderful. He is awesome. He is worthy to serve. Yeah. See what, you are so privileged to come and study here and learn about Jesus. Yeah. And you're making it the passion of your life.